tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is architect Craig Hodgetts and interior designer Leslie Kushner. Architect Craig Hodgetts has lectured around the world on subjects which include urban design, environmental issues, art, and film as they apply to architecture. He studied automotive design and theater prior to earning a master's in architecture from Yale University. 3 years later, in 1996, you founded your very important firm called Studio Works. How did that happen, and who were you with? And you got so many awards.
We're all the way back there.
Well, you got so many awards that I think it just followed your career,
well,
didn't it?
What was remarkable was that I had a mentor at Yale, James Sterling, who was an English architect, an amazing man. And
Sir James.
Sir James. And he got a commission to do some work for the New York City Planning Department. And I had just graduated from school, and he asked me if I could come and help him start an office, which is an amazing opportunity. So we started an office at 33 Union Square in Manhattan, just next to Union Square. And it was a remarkable building. It had the communist newspaper was on the floor just above us. Directly below us was a rag picker who actually just filled it up with refuse. On the very top floor was Saul Steinberg. So we went to work there.
I know that building because Antonio, the graphic designer, was also in that building.
And I'm about to give you the big one then.
Andy Warhol, right? Andy Warhol on the corner.
He moved in about 2 years after we were there.
In the same building?
In the same building.
Oh, I used to work at that building.
And but the funny thing was, Jim's work only lasted for about a year. And when he left, I said, can I just take over the lease? So we really just evolved into having this very, very terrific studio, downtown New York, just happenstantially.
So you stayed with the other architects who were there?
No, there were no other architects.
Oh, just you and
Sterling? That was it.
Oh.
So they pulled out, and I immediately painted the whole place something like the color of your set.
Really?
With metallic paints and all of this kind of stuff. Andy Warhol moved in, and the building became this sort of very notorious place.
It was a great building, great area too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And very hip. So you were right on the cutting edge again, or beginning.
Max's Kansas City is where we went to lunch.
Right.
Just about every day.
So how long did you stay in that firm?
About 3 years.
Oh, it was a short...
And well, what happened was, I had a graphic designer friend, Keith Goddard, from Yale, who came down and started sharing a space with me, and another architect, Lester Walker. Together we called it Works. And my wife, at that time, Victoria Hodgetts, became an art director for New York Magazine when New York had just started. And so there was an opportunity for us to do lots of visionary design work and have New York Magazine feature it as the future of New York City. And so, again, very, very happenstantial. But what transpired was that after a couple of years there, a remarkable man, Herb Blau, who was the director at Lincoln Center, moved out here to become the provost at Cal Arts and start Cal Arts.
That's why you were the founding architecture department.
Because I got a call from Herb Blau.
I'm glad I'm up on what you've done.
And Herb had been an instructor of mine, and I had idolized him, much as I had Jim Sterling, when I was at San Francisco State studying drama.
I
So
see.
you never know what's going to happen.
So that's how you became the founding architect dean or
Yeah.
of that department.
Yeah.
And that was it was brand new, wasn't
It just started. It was an amazing time. We had Mel Powell, we had Buddy Rich,
know.
we had gosh, all these artists who were just amazing for their time. Judy Chicago.
I was surprised that all those wonderful musicians came there to teach right
Ravi
away.
Shankar. It was an amazing, amazing time. Paul Brock, another artist.
But you continued to teach. I mean, you taught there for a while. You've been a critic at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone back with the Eros Sarnan chair at Yale.
Yes, a little bit.
What is that when you go back to lecture? Does that last a long time, or is it one lecture? Or?
Oh, sometimes it's just a lecture, but the sort of critics' chairs are generally a teaching slot for about a semester.
Oh, so it does.
And you commute back and forth, but
Oh, I
it's
see.
a special studio that students take.
So you do spend time there.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very exciting because you learn so much from the students.
Well, in between all of this teaching, I think, then you started another firm, Hodgetts and Fung.
Yeah, I got you at a loss for words.
I was trying to figure out how long it was, 15 years or something
Something like
before
that.
you started this firm?
Hodgetts and Fung, yeah. And that transpired because I had pretty much dropped out of architecture.
Oh, you had.
The postmodern.
Oh, you mean you were teaching
No,
more?
I was teaching a little bit, but the postmodern movement, I had no sympathy for, and I couldn't get arrested. And so I started writing screenplays and doing
You're
things like
kidding,
that.
did you?
And Ming Fung, who had just begun as a designer at another firm, coaxed me into coming and working on a competition with them. And the creative bonding that happened was really exceptional. And I thought, architecture could be fun again. Maybe we could do something, and we started the
So
firm.
you had a little hiatus in there.
Yes.
But then when you went back, I mean, the two of you or your firm started winning awards again. I mean, Academy of Arts and Letters
Yes,
award.
we started producing some work that people took a lot of notice of.
And that's because it was the cutting edge.
I think so. I mean,
what
you have
is-
to tell me. I don't know.
I mean, that's what I read, and that's what I was thinking happened. But what is the cutting edge, and how do you ever stay ahead of it?
I read something the other day which was never be a prisoner of anything. And I think if you're not a prisoner,
I mean, you can
and
open
you're
up.
genuinely out there, and you're genuinely exploring, and you're genuinely following your instincts and your heart, that you sometimes stumble on things which are very unique.
But you have to keep ahead of the trends. You have to stay open, but you also have to keep ahead of the trends for you to be on the cutting edge.
Well, I'm probably, I don't know, this is kind of funny, I'm probably more in the kind of John Cassavetes realm, if you think about filmmakers.
Like
And maybe
guerrilla
not.
filmmaking in a way.
In a way, our work has always been very uniquely suited to every single situation. So we don't really have a
I see.
style. It's very idiosyncratic. We just look at things. We think this is going to be right for this situation.
That's another question, because architects always like to put their stamp
Yes.
of their style on things. And that's interesting that you said that. One of the new buildings that you did was this Yamano School and Tower in Tokyo.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because here, look at this building. It's what, 36, 38 stories high?
30 stories high.
30 stories high?
Yes. We had actually never, ever worked on a skyscraper before. Certainly not in Japan, and certainly not with a client that wanted a very, very bold statement.
But look at this. Tell us this, and then this.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Tokyo as a place to live is remarkable. Along where your finger is, That's a high-speed train that runs along there.
That's what's amazing.
It's a high-speed train.
And it's covered, you've covered it, is that it?
Well,
Or it runs in front of that?
Just runs right along the
Right along the
bottom
edge.
And the building authorities in Tokyo are utterly different than those here in the United States. Their approach is to say, what can this building do for all of its surroundings? And so in that pursuit, they say, well, if you can make this a special event for the train riders, we'll give you a bonus. You can put another floor in your building.
Isn't that amazing?
It's
Because they
absolutely
want
amazing.
the people who are traveling by it to have some artistic view or
They want them
aesthetic.
an aesthetic view. And this is so
This
highly
is it
valued.
at night, right?
Yeah, so highly valued in the Japanese culture.
So can they see it as they're driving by? I mean, speeding by?
Well, all those angles that you see back there on the back
yeah.
of the building are so that they provide a point of view for the train rider to watch the students who are working in the beauty school.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So they're working day and night and they're driving by watching this.
Yeah,
That's
they have
so
an evening
great.
school and a day school.
I'm going to hold this one up too because this shows a lot of the glass.
Now that is a different building, of course.
This is a different building.
That's
This
a
is the-
library out in Sylmar, here in Los Angeles. And it uses, you're right, many of the same principles.
It had that same kind of
Very
feeling,
much
but not the same. It doesn't have as many angles.
Doesn't have as many angles, right. And because this one exists against the San Gabriel Mountains. And they have this, you know, a kind of
rolling.
rolling
Right.
kind of profile. We gave the building a rolling profile, and you see it in silhouette against the mountains. It echoes the mountains.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And before we leave, I know you did this renovation of the Hollywood Bowl, or worked on the Hollywood Bowl. And we talk about historic buildings. I want to just show, you know, the Hollywood Bowl is really not a historic building, is it? Because it's been changed and changed
Yes,
and changed.
right.
And this probably is how it started.
That was about 1928, I think, the image we're looking at there.
And I'm going to show
And there
this
were-
one because this has 4 images on it, right?
There were numerous other Hollywood bowls that were built, you know, along the way. One stuck, and it turned out that that one embodied that really famous shape. But the shape didn't really work acoustically. And so that's why you found Frank Gehry and others working so hard to try to make the acoustics work.
I'm going to show what you used for the acoustics.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of fun with this.
This, am I holding it the
That's
right
it.
way?
Yeah.
This is like something floating over the top. You kept the shell back.
Well, no, we're building a new shell.
New shell,
The
but
new
it'll
shell
have
is-
that feeling.
It has very much the feeling of the original shell, but it's a very, very much larger, almost half again as large.
Oh, wow.
So it's a major structure, and it's possible to mount a full-on theatrical performance in
So
there.
you're doing different things with it.
Exactly. It
Should I
has-
show this one next?
Well, you could.
Are they all the
That's
same?
the top of it.
This is the
It's
top
very
side.
complex. We like to think of this as being
Let's see, look,
something
yeah.
kind of like a
It's like an alien.
Like the wolf in sheep's clothing.
It looks like the alien's landing.
Maybe a little bit.
Does it come up and down, or does it
goes
stay?
up and down.
I think this one's a beauty.
It moves up and down, and maybe that last one is what
I'll
you really
show
want
this
to show.
because I think this is beautiful. This looks like it's
Like a piece of
landing.
jewelry is
Yeah,
what we want it to look like.
exactly. And then this is the finished.
Correct.
So this is how the people will see it. They'll
That's
see this.
how the people will see it with the what we think of as the organ pipes of the bowl, which are in fact the loudspeakers.
Oh,
which
so
are
that'll
those
make it
elements
look-
which are hanging down there. And we're very, very, you know, very pleased that all the technical things have not destroyed the aesthetic image.
That's the thing when you're working with historic buildings, even though it's not such a historical building because it's been changed
that's
over
right.
the years, but we still feel it's like our
Oh.
Hollywood Bowl.
Sometimes I think the memory is actually stronger. You know, as a loved one ages, the image that you have of them has the freshness of when you first met their loved one. And I think the Hollywood Bowl, in many ways, people think of as this, very sublime, very beautiful shape.
Exactly. And the other thing is, transfer that to opera, because I saw the Robert Wilson opera, Madame Butterfly, and what he brought, like this freshness and this color and this whole new thing, but you were listening to all the beautiful old music.
Oh,
so it's just, it works. It's like the Hollywood Bowl. Your mind says it's bigger than it actually.
I think that's exactly right. And of course, that's that treacherous place for you to be as an architect, because you have to, it's almost more difficult than building something fresh.
Right.
Because it's like, in a way, it's like making Lord of the Rings or making a movie version of a novel that everyone loved. And everybody's out there waiting for it to let them down.
Exactly, because they have this feeling. Craig, thanks for being with us. You've been terrific today.
Well, it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Joan.
Craig Hodgetts. And don't go away, because we'll be right back with Leslie Kushner.
That was too quick.
They were. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. This is the Joan Quinn Profiles, and I'm here with Leslie Kushner, who was born in New York and raised in Los Angeles. Leslie attended San Fernando Valley College, which later changed to Northridge. She graduated from UCLA's design program, and I guess you always wanted to be an interior designer.
I think probably I did.
So how did you get started in the design field?
Well, I went in sort of through the back door. My uncle was a designer working with a major design firm in LA. When they disbanded, he formed his own firm. I was working in public relations at the time, and he said, "You're so artistic."
Oh,
so
because you have to have an in, don't you?
Yeah. So I started working for him, and I found that I loved design. And so I went back to school while I was working full-time.
Oh, you
and
did?
got my degree working at night, taking all of my classes at night.
Oh, so you had to enhance what you had already studied.
Well, I had studied fine art. And
right.
it's a big difference between fine art and the study of design and architecture.
But you think it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it helps to have artistic abilities.
Abilities,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It sounds like this is very specific.
Yeah.
Being what you're doing. Yeah. Then you went to work for a company called Interiors Inc., etc.
Interiors, etc.
And,
right.
and I think you were doing all kinds of design jobs. Was it really what you had wanted to do?
Well, at that point, I still hadn't yet focused on where I was going to specialize. And the mainstay of that firm was model homes. And it gives great experience to a designer starting out, because you're designing every style, every color scheme, using all kinds of fabrics. So it's great experience.
That's what I was thinking, because there were many other kind of jobs involved in that company besides model homes. So
Absolutely.
You ran the gamut, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, if you designed, was it just like one model home and a whole group?
No. Sometimes we would do 50, 60 homes a year.
Oh, is that right?
The complexes ranged anywhere from 3 to 8 models in a complex.
Oh, so each one had to be decorated differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they were moving all around the state, or all around out of the state?
Well, most of the work we did was out of state, primarily in Arizona. We worked for a big developer there.
Well, do you have to design with Arizona in mind, even though you were living in California?
Yeah, I think that anytime you go to any specific area, you want to study the demographics, understand who your target audience is, and design for them. For example, in Arizona, very hot colors. They had a lot of Indian and Hispanic people coming into the area, and what would appeal to them in terms of color schemes, for example, would be really hot colors. And I cringe when I think of some of the work we did back in the late 70s, hot pink and red, for example.
That was pretty trendy then. Turquoise, blue, and green.
Yes, precisely.
But that was kind of what was going on. It was a turn your face on the conservative, I think.
Yeah.
And what other kinds of jobs did you do with this particular company?
Okay, well, we did corporate offices, banks, And then for the model homes, we also did common areas, which included recreation rooms for the complex.
It was a real, and you had to understand what went on in those areas. I mean, you had to design for banks and common areas and different things like that.
Yeah.
The need.
Precisely. For example, in a bank, you're not just dealing with the whole building and the environment of the building in terms of making it look pretty. You've got the needs of the tellers, the managers, the executive staff. You've got the end users, the people who are coming in for banking services. And then they're not just coming up to the teller. You've got new accounts. You've got, well,
yeah,
on
and you don't think about that. And all those areas are probably different comfort zones or different ideas.
Precisely.
One thing that I thought was pretty interesting, you did then go to work for a firm, DBI?
Yes, Douglas Bernard Incorporated.
And it was all international. It was international work.
Yeah, Doug's offices were based in Los Angeles, and most of his work was outside the United States.
Did you travel a lot?
Yeah. Well, actually more towards the end. All of our work was done primarily in-house, in the office. And when we went to the location, it was usually towards the end for installation, with the exception of one project in Amsterdam.
I thought the interesting thing was when you were working for them, you decorated a helicopter.
Yeah.
And a yacht.
Yes.
Did you deal with the clients in those situations?
Very, very seldom. As the project manager, I was given information through the head designer, who was Douglas, and he pretty much translated. I occasionally met with the client, but usually it was translated through the head designer.
I think that sounded like it was pretty exciting.
Yeah,
because
it was
there's
very
so many different needs, from a helicopter to a yacht, to a model home, to a bank.
Yeah.
You have to be very open.
Yeah,
one thing I think you also did was you worked with on the political side, if you want to call it, the Coastal Commission and things like that, which must be very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I worked for a developer in Playa del Rey, and all of their developments were in the coastal zone. So as the head designer, I worked to put their projects through the Coastal Commission. And it was a very fascinating experience, because it was interesting to be able to sit on the fence and see both sides of it. Of course, I was representing the developer, but I could also understand the environmental needs of why there was a need for a coastal commission to preserve certain public areas.
Well, I think that just naturally leads into what you started doing, being a mediator, or arbitrator. Tell us what that is. That was just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Was it because of this Coastal Commission?
Not at all, not at all. I was doing my design work, and one day a postcard came across my desk, and it said, "Are you interested in arbitration? Perhaps you should investigate." And it was an 800 number, and I called, and the manager of the school got me on the phone. We had a long conversation and asked me to send in an application. And at that time, one was required to have a minimum of 20 years experience in their field of expertise.
Oh, I would think. In any field. It could be any field?
Yeah, it could be any field. But in this case, they were specializing in training people in alternative dispute resolution with background in construction, architecture, and interior design.
But you didn't have to be a lawyer?
No.
That's what's surprising to me, because I always thought that arbitration and mediation was done by lawyers or judges.
Well, it is, and primarily when alternative dispute resolution became popular, it was done primarily by judges, retired judges and attorneys.
Right.
But then someone very bright discovered that if you have someone who has 20 years of experience in their specific field, whether it be medical or design or construction,
and you had the 20 years. Okay,
20 years, that who knows better than what is usual and customary in that field. Now, there are things that happen in the design and architecture field and construction that are usual and customary that everyone who's in the field knows, but it's not written down anywhere. There's no law that says you do it this way. So when you have a dispute within the field of design, construction, or architecture, and you get someone who has worked in that field for a long time and knows what's usual and customary, and what's expected. Much better to have that person mediate
Yes.
than someone who is a judge or an attorney who knows the letter of the law but doesn't have a clue as to what goes on in the field.
In other words, there's unwritten laws, unspoken laws even in that field, and you know what they are. You would know what they are because you dealt with them.
Because of the experience.
I see.
Right. Now, it just
And then
so-
how do they find you?
Well, that's, well, one, such as myself, I would have to go and join a panel,
I see.
an arbitration or mediation panel. I'm not yet there because most of the work I've been doing, because my design practice remains viable and arbitration and mediation does take time, all of the work I'm doing is pro bono, and I work for the City of West Hollywood.
So, so the city brings you in. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fabulous.
And I also work for Superior Court.
Oh, that's great. So
Yeah.
when they have something like that that needs to be resolved, they have you, and you can usually get it off the calendar, out of the city hall.
Yeah, except that I found out after joining the Superior Court panel that I'm not necessarily called upon to do cases in my area of expertise. I've done all kinds of other cases
that right?
are not personal injury,
But you
property
know,
damage.
It's like listening to both sides, right? And
Yeah.
having some kind of common sense in many cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I find fascinating about the process of arbitration and mediation is, as the mediator, which is just someone facilitating an agreement between parties, as opposed to arbitration, where an arbitrator actually sits as a judge.
Oh, that's what I'm glad you differentiated those.
One can take the contract and toss it out the window. If I have two parties come to me and it becomes clear that the intent of the parties in arranging signing a contract was not what they hoped to agree to, you can basically take that and throw it out and just listen to the parties, find out what their needs were, and then come up with something, hopefully, that works.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah.
And we only have a few minutes left, a few seconds really. And I know one of the big projects is this John Lautner house that you
Yes.
did. This is the John Lautner house, actually. I'll do it this way. These are the angles in it. And then I'm going to show what you did as far as the interiors, which is pretty fabulous to have your interiors in a Lautner house.
Yes, I was very excited about this
And
project.
tell me a little bit about the furniture.
Well, all of the furniture was designed on the drafting table. I designed almost every piece that's in the house, and we had craftsmen coming from literally all over the country who had heard about John Lautner building this home, and they all brought their portfolios. We ended up hiring a crew of carpenters who were on the project for a couple of years.
What
And
year
they
was
built,
this?
This was 1987 through 89. Yeah.
That is so great. Leslie, thank you for sharing everything
My
that you
pleasure.
did tell us about today. It's so interesting because it's a new field. And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. Thanks.
Thank you.